Yemeni forces have launched fresh retaliatory drone attacks against Saudi Arabia in response to the kingdom's war on Yemen. Attacks targeted the Abha airport in Saudi Arabia's Asir province and Jizan airport in the capital city of Jizan province. Spokesman for the army said drone attack on Jizan airport also targeted an adjacent parking area for fighter jets. And he said Yemen will carry out its attacks against Saudi military installations and airports. And Saudi media later confirmed a Jizan attack, but claimed the kingdom intercepted the drone. Yemeni fighters have intensified the retaliatory attacks to compel Riyadh to stop its onslaught against their country. The Saudi-led war, which began back in March 2015, has so far claimed well over 15,000 Yemeni lives, most of them civilians. And now joining us for this news review is Mr. Ken Stone from the Hamilton Coalition to Stop the War out of Hamilton, and Saeb Shaath, author and Middle East affairs expert, joining us out of Belfast. Gentlemen, I want to welcome you both to the program. And if we could start there in Hamilton with you, Mr. Ken Stone, your thoughts on this?
Well, under international law, the Yemeni people have the legal right to resist in any manner they choose the illegal Saudi U.S. Military intervention in their country. And as your viewers may already know, the Saudis tried in 2015 to interfere, to meddle in the internal affairs of Yemen by trying to insert their man as the president and leader of Yemen. The Yemeni people, of course, resisted. They were outraged because, again, under international law, they are the only people who get to determine who runs their country. And in resisting the Saudi aggression against their country, unlike the Saudis, the Ansarullah movement has carefully chosen, in my opinion, to avoid civilian targets and to focus on military targets inside Saudi Arabia. The Saudi-U.S. coalition, on the other hand, routinely targets civilian areas in Yemen, and they have killed, according to the latest UN figures I've seen, close to 100,000 people, and have put 8 million people on the edge of starvation. So that's one point. The other point I'd like to raise is that in the anti-war movement, people have been, in Western countries, have been arguing for their countries, agitating for their countries to stop selling arms to Saudi Arabia. But I think now we have to go one step further and call for an end of the Saudi-U.S. aggression against Yemen altogether. The Saudis, the Americans, and their allies need to get out of Yemen altogether, and we need to look for a political solution to bring an end to the war and let the Yemeni people determine their own future.
And Mr. Saeb Shaath, that's the whole thing, isn't it? I mean, nations, they bleed, they sweat, they pray, they go to war, all for what? Their sovereignty, their autonomy. Why can't the Yemenis be given the same exact luxury as any other nation is entitled to having? It has a, I mean, basically, Riyadh wants to install a puppet regime in the country that, answers to Riyadh, while Riyadh itself is answering to Washington. So you can see how the Yemenis are very irate having this many hands in their cookie jar.
The Yemeni people are trying to set an example in Arabia. They tried with the revolution to achieve a sovereign state which is not in the sphere of influence of Saudi Arabia, the United States of America, as Ali Saleh used to run the Yemen, and wanted, with this revolution, the Yemeni nearly agreed in sharing power with all the parties. The Saudis, when they seen that, they interfered quick. They didn't want to see an example of a sovereign state who's sovereign in its own resources and pulling their own population out of but engineered poverty, actually, by the neighboring rich, wealthy country who want to set an example of Yemen to their own population. But Yemen turned the table and sat itself as an example to be a sovereign, independent state, which will influence people in Arabia, like especially in the eastern province, who their brothers of the Yemenis stood against the tyranny of Saudis. But all of this picture seen by the United States of America, getting this strategic state as Yemen, who is near the Horn of Africa, controlling Bab el-Mandeb and controlling the Arab Sea and controlling this navigation system, maritime system, which 40% of the world energy passes through. This is, they thought, if this state become sovereign, then the United States of America cannot control these waterways. And then they pushed the Saudis to act, to destroy this country, to bring them back. So Western-backed military aggression of the Saudis, coupled with a naval blockade, destroyed the Yemeni infrastructure and led to massive humanitarian crisis, which is being unfolded day by day in Yemen. Many Western countries are not interested in stopping this war, because this war, it's to them, they're showing they obey the masters, the United States of America, they're secure in Israel, and it's lucrative business for them selling arms to the Saudis, who they like to milk more money out of them.
And so, Mr. Saeb Shaath, we're seeing this upscale in, or at least we're seeing more sophisticated retaliatory attacks by the Yemenis. How will that reverberate throughout Saudi Arabia? Do you think we'll see any change in policy when these attacks, these drone attacks, get deeper and deeper into Saudi territory?
Yemeni people and the Yemeni army and its alliance, the Ansarullah, they actually trying to stop the Saudis through an indigenous technology, develop the drones or the missiles, the winged missiles, like Zilzal 1, which is targeted on a Friday, Saudi's military bases. But they're reacting to massacres which been committed by the Saudis in like Friday in Khadr district of Taiz, killing a whole family, 8 of members of that family, and injuring many of them. This pushes the Yemeni army and the Ansarullah to retaliate, and that's why they target now with sophisticated indigenous Yemeni weaponries developed in Yemen by the Yemeni scientists themselves and deployed by Yemeni people against this aggression. Every military target in Jizan, in Asir, in Riyadh, or strategic oil targets, it will be, as the Yemeni proved, reached by the Yemeni forces. And then it's up to the Saudi people to put pressure on their own tyrant to stop this war against Yemeni. Because the Yemenis, from last year, they were warning the Saudis, we're going to resort to some strategic attacks which will push you in the corner and which will bring you back to the table of negotiations to stop this war. But the arrogance of the Saudis is beyond reach, because their master, the United States of America, they are not asking them to stop the war. They want them to continue. The key here in the hands of the United States administration, Trump's administration.
And Mr. Ken Stone, your closing thoughts, please.
I'm glad the previous speaker made the points he did about the strategic location of Yemen. That is key to why the U.S. is backing Saudi Arabia in this war, because the U.S. is seeking to achieve hegemony in the Middle East, that is to say domination of the Middle East, in the same way they're trying to achieve domination or hegemony over the entire world. That's what's behind the war. And Yemen sits on the straits through which, as the previous speaker said, 40% of the world's oil passes. Yemen also has very many resources. The United States wants to be on top of the Middle East. That's why they are supporting the Saudis in this war. That's why they're threatening Iran and making warlike threats against the country and its people. So people in the West should realize that this is not a war simply being waged by Saudi Arabia on its own. This war could not be waged without the strong, constant, strategic support of the United States in helping the Saudis to try and break down the resistance, the legitimate resistance of the Yemeni people, and we hope that they will not succeed in that.
Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. Ken Stone out of Hamilton and Saeb Shaath out of Belfast. And viewers, that's a wrap for this segment of your Press TV's News Review. Thanks for tuning in, and goodbye for now.